Welcome to the REmarketing Podcast. My name is Jerome Lewis. I'm your host for today. The REmarketing Podcast is a podcast where we talk marketing, tech, business, and leadership. We talk these things for real estate agents, real estate investors, and real estate entrepreneurs. The REmarketing Podcast is a podcast that has two purposes. Purpose number one, to spotlight you, your business, your product, or your service in a way that provides value to you, including market exposure and content creation. Purpose number two, to educate and inform our audience and listeners. With that, we have a special guest today, Pete Reese. Pete Reese is the president of REalVest Properties, a land development and investment company. With nearly 2 decades of real estate experience as a broker and investor, Pete has successfully purchased and sold hundreds of pieces of real estate for a profit over the years for himself and on behalf of his clients. He's on track to earn $4 million in revenue in 2022 with his land flipping and development business. Pete always looks for his next deal, including his longtime dream of his own private island. Besides his professional accomplishment, Pete is a proud father to 3 beautiful girls, keeps up with his family by working out and enjoying a vegan diet, nice, and is the 31st great grandson of King Harry II. Pete, I'm excited that you're here. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Jerome. I really appreciate it. That was
Absolutely.
quite the intro. It makes me sound much better than I am, maybe.
I don't know, man. You sound pretty good to me. I think anybody would like that. Yep. With that, Pete, could you tell us a little bit about your story and how you got into real estate?
Yeah. Well, I've been in real estate since, I guess, officially since the year 2000, when my wife and we purchased our first home. That kind of started our whole journey, as it does for many people. At the time, we bought a home in Southern California here for $195,000, which seemed like so much money at the time. And in Southern California, you really can't buy much for that price at this time.
Yeah.
But we bought it with an FHA loan, so we were very little out of pocket, 3.5%. And we held it for a couple of years and actually rented it out for a portion of that because our life situation changed a little bit. But, after holding it, we ended up with, I think, $50,000 profit in a very short amount of time, in our opinion. So it kind of got us hooked a little bit, and progressed to, we started eventually flipping homes. So we started doing that. We were watching the shows on HD TV and everything. So we saw people flipping homes and having a lot of success with it. So we figured, hey, we could do that ourselves. So we did that for a while, ended up getting my broker's license. So started kind of helping other clients and investors look for deals. And then the real estate market crashed here in the, late 2000s. And at that point, I was like, hey, you got to shift a little bit. So I was in real estate, but I figured, what's selling at that point was the REO, the bank-owned properties. So I focused solely on listing those properties for the banks. There was plenty of business to go around at that point. And did some focusing on short sales, did that for a while. And then for a number of years, I worked exclusively representing kind of larger investment companies, just finding deals for them as a broker, and mostly off the MLS. And a couple of years ago, it got to the point where I was like, I really got to get back involved in the investing space ourselves. It was kind of a real passion, and stumbled into some stuff online about land flipping, land development, and kind of went down a whole rabbit hole on that, and figured out a business model that I thought would work for me, and been going really heavy at that for the past almost couple of years. And we're on track. This is our second full year in the land flipping business, and we're on track to hopefully hit $4 million this year, 2022, in revenue, and that's about 50% profit margin on those properties. So we're just buying and selling properties, mostly holding them for short term, and selling them quickly.
Thanks for sharing that. That sounds very interesting. For our audience, do you have like a course or a YouTube channel or anything where you teach this stuff, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, so I've got a podcast that we're doing. It's called Turning Profit, and that's launching here any week now, depending on when you're listening to this episode. So that there's a website associated with that, and each month on the website we post a monthly income report. So you'll be able to track our progress as far as how much revenue we did that month, how many deals that we did, how did each individual deal go, profit margin on each individual deal, and just a lot of insight and things we've learned along the way, and kind of really seeing how the business is done. So just trying to educate, don't have any course or program or anything like that, but just kind of putting it out there for educational purposes. It's stuff that I would have liked to have seen when I got started with the land flipping business, because it really wasn't out there, and it still isn't out there. So trying to fill a little bit of a gap there.
Thanks for sharing that. When you were telling us your story, you mentioned HGTV.
Yes.
And we see that come up like a lot in our industry. Could you so you have like some probably like intimate experience like with the HGTV stuff and the real world stuff. Could you tell us about the differences? Is it the same? Is it different? Like, what is that experience like? Is TV is it real? Is it like, what is that like? So
there are some similarities between HGTV and reality. A lot of it's kind of sugar coated, and they don't get into the real stuff that maybe might pose a challenge for, especially newer investors before they really know what to get. Like, they don't go into the financing side of it. They don't really go into, I mean, I know that they create drama in a lot of these episodes, and that's part of it as well, but it's real world in a way, but not as deep as you need to go. So we were lucky. We did really well on our flipping business, and on our first flip, in fact, we bought it with the intent of kind of fixing it up and doing all these things to it. But as soon as we bought it, we got approached by a relative of one of the neighbors, and they wanted to buy it from us. So at the time, this is before the real estate market crashed, 2007 and 8, before that time. And we bought the home with 100% financing. At the time, you could get these 80-20 loans, they called them, which is 80% first, 20% second mortgage. And it all happened at the same time. So you didn't even have to come to closing with any money out of your own pocket, aside from maybe some closing costs. So it was crazy. We ended up selling that property for about a $75,000 profit before we even made our first payment. So that was kind of a freak thing. So there are things like that happen sometimes, but there are also things that happen as well. Like sometimes you end up holding a property for longer than you want to, or making less than you want to on the deal, and those are a little bit stressful. So it's flipping homes is definitely a viable business model, and a great business model for people, especially for people that really love the improvement side of things, fixing something up, taking something and creating something better from that. So that's a really good business model for some people. Honestly, I don't really love that side of things. It's a lot of logistics involved with fixing up a property. So that's why that land investing kind of really appealed to me, because in a lot of cases we're doing some minor development things, but we're not fixing anything up in the property. We might do some clearing, we might do a perk test, we might do a survey, something. We might do like a minor subdivision, something along those lines. But we're not doing a full rehab, which is a lot different. So, and we're able to hold these properties for a very short amount of time. Our average is about 60 days of hold time.
So there's like a joke going around like on social media, online. It's like, everything I learned in real estate school was like irrelevant. And I think one of the questions is like, how many feet is in an acre or something? I can't remember. I don't know, but you could easily Google it. So I understand what their issue is about bringing up this stuff. I'm saying all of that to say, I want to hear your perspective about you, like getting your broker's license and also being an investor. Like, what is that journey like? Was it scary? Did it help? Did it have no effect? What is your experience?
Well, I definitely agree with you, with that joke that you're talking about, the training that was available for my broker's license and the things that I had to study in order to get my broker's license were nothing like reality. So as soon as I passed the test, which I wasn't sure if I had even passed after I took the test, I was like, I have no idea if I was right on many of these questions. I did pass somehow, but it was, doing my first transactions as a broker were kind of like a learning experience. Like, you're just thrown into the fire. And especially since I wasn't working for another brokerage. I was just kind of on my own, independent. That's kind of the way I like to be. So I just figured things out as I went, and you couldn't really even Google stuff that much back then. That was very helpful. There wasn't a lot that was really helpful online. So it's one of those things you got to learn by doing. So it is really good for me to have that base, especially when it comes to the transaction side of things, because I know exactly what it takes to get from a contract to closing, and who you have to push along the way, and how you have to make that all happen. So that's pretty invaluable experience, I think, in that way.
Thanks for sharing that. When like I dabble in both, right? Sometimes I'm over on the real estate investor, sometimes I'm over on the agent. And you were telling your story, you mentioned like the REOs and the short sales. And from my understanding, like it's not easy to go and get a relationship or be the person for those kind of deals. Could you talk about your experience with that? Like, did you like it? How did you get involved, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, really good question. And who knows what's happening with this market that we've got now. I mean, I think it's probably a really good idea for certain agents to position themselves in that way as an REO listing agent, if that's an area that they're interested in. Really, back then, it was all about breaking. The way you broke in was doing BPOs, broker price opinions, and it's like a mini appraisal, and it's a mini report where you kind of write up, you give some comps, normally 3 sold and 3 active comps. You take pictures of the property, whether it's outside photos or you schedule time to get inside, depending on what the assignment is. And you do that, and you do a good write up and do good work, and then you'll hopefully get noticed by the banks, get your foot in the door for a certain area, and you hopefully start getting the listings that way. But most of these asset managers and banks, they've got a procedure for you to apply, and then you'll start getting BPOs, and then if they like your work, then hopefully you'll start getting the listings. But I didn't. It was great at the time to be able to have that personally. From my perspective, it was great because it was a tough time for a lot of people, especially in real estate. They're just regular deals weren't happening very often. So the bank stuff was happening. There were still a lot of investors buying stuff, a ton of activity, but they were buying all bank properties. So if you could get the listings for the bank properties, then you would get pretty much guaranteed income off of that. There's kind of the people side of that, which is not very appealing in my experience. I mean, first thing you do when you get an assignment as an REO broker is they'll send you an email that says, hey, new property assignment, 123 Main Street. And your first job is you have to go down to the property and you have to determine if it's occupied or if it's vacant. And if it's occupied, your job is to make contact with the occupants and work out a cash for keys deal. So, and sometimes the homeowner or the occupant was unaware that it had actually gone through the foreclosure process, and you're kind of showing up as the representative of the bank when in reality I'm just a real estate broker handling the listing. And it's just tough people situations, and
that sounds scary, especially if you go through a process and you don't even know. It's like, oh, you gotta leave because everything.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, there was a lot of modifications and a lot of delays at these foreclosure auctions. So a lot of times people were confused on whether it actually went through the process. They might have thought that, oh, I've been working on with them to delay this auction, we're getting a modification done, and they may have been going through that process, but for one reason or another it got diverted and it just went through the foreclosure process. And I remember times where I'd knock on the door and it would be a little kid that answered the door, and it's just kind of heartbreaking in a way, and I'm like, hey, can I speak to your parents? I don't know. It's just tough situation. So I didn't like that aspect of it at all. But I always think back to that, how tough that was. And it was just tough times for a lot of people. I was thankful to have the business and to have income coming in as a result of these, but it just wasn't it. I don't look upon it favorably, that's for sure.
Yeah, the land is. I could see why you would appreciate that better. Jeez, that could be some tough stuff to deal with.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to move on to our questions. I have some questions for you. The first question I have is, tell us the most important lesson you've learned over it says career, but I want to hear more specifically about the flipping that you're doing, like what you're most excited about. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's the big thing that I learned about the land flipping, and this was my perspective on land prior to I got involved with the whole land flipping business, was that it takes forever to sell land. That was my that was my thought process. Like, okay, you list a piece of land, there's a potential for some good profit, but it may take a year or two to sell. I see these things sitting on the market forever, but I learned that there's a way to do the business where it can be very short-term holds, and it's all about getting the deal for the right price, adding value in whatever way you can, reasonably, and then listing it for an aggressive price on the resale side. So the other thing is you got to be buying good properties as well. So if there's good properties, there will be people ready to buy them, especially if you can offer it at a good price, slightly below market.
think so. That was my understanding too, and I know like sometimes we just come up with understandings out of who knows. And
Yeah.
it's like ignorance, to be honest. But I thought the same thing. I'm like, yeah, land that would take forever. Why would anybody want to do that? But here you are. You're like, nope, doesn't take long if you do it right.
Yeah.
It's not going
I'm
to take that
about
long.
I'm about 100 deals in, and my average hold time, like the average amount of time that I actually own a property from the time I close on the purchase close to the time that it actually resells through an escrow or attorney is 60 days. So that's a
Wow,
very short term hold.
that is very short term.
Yeah. I
Have
mean, some
you?
take longer,
Huh?
some are shorter though, so it all averages out, but on average it's 60 days.
Okay, and you said the podcast is coming out like soon.
Soon.
Have you
Yes.
done an article or a podcast on like the how long that would take, like going through that process, start to finish, or
For land flipping, yeah,
yeah?
we've got some episodes
Okay,
in the can, I guess you could say, that recorded about kind of the whole process and how the business model works. So those are going to be some of the intro episodes that are released.
okay, got you, got you. Thank you for sharing that. What is one piece of advice you would give someone starting out in the land flipping business?
hmm Well, I would say if you're interested in getting started in the land flipping business, you really got to learn everything you can about, first of all, the business model, how each piece of the business model works, and the other side of things is how to evaluate properties. Because I mean, we're buying these properties all over the country, and it's rare that I would ever see a property in person. So behind the computer, we're able to do all these evaluations on a property without even actually going there. But it's very important to know what's a good property, what's not a good property, how to how to value that property. Like what is it worth, and not a pie in the sky number, like what you could actually sell it for a short term hold time. So about learning, it all comes back to learning and knowledge. You really got to get in deep, and you really got to have an interest in it, and just go really deep on the education side of things.
Thank you. If you could, or let me say it this way, in your opinion, what is the most important personality trait or strength that someone should have to be successful in land flipping?
Well, you definitely, if you're looking to do some bigger numbers, you definitely have to be that type that can be consistent. Now, we generate all our leads from direct mail. So one of the big stumbling things I see all the time with other land investors is they'll send out a batch of mail, and then leads will start coming in, they'll get busy, and then they'll forget to or not
Follow up.
prioritize sending out more mail on a regular basis. So kind of like your podcast, you've got a bunch of episodes, you're very consistent about posting all these and recording new episodes and doing everything that you need to do to make it successful. The land business is similar in the way that you've got to be very, very dedicated and consistent in order to keep that mail going out and your lead generation going. Because when that kind of slows down or stops, then your whole business stops. It's about buying. It's about buying properties for the right price and good properties for the right price. So you've got to have that machine, that engine constantly running.
And you like to use direct mail.
You're right.
And are you using like any specific, without sharing all your strategies, but are you using anything specific like a letter, a postcard? You do a combination? What's your marketing strategy like?
Yeah, basically we're pretty simple. We do it's a 2-page letter, and first page is a letter. Second page is actually a purchase agreement that we send. So it's got the information about their property. Say it's a 10-acre property in, New York, state, and we put an actual offer price on the purchase agreement. So that generally gets people's attention. It may not be top dollar, like if they're going to retail property and do the things they need to do in order to retail a property, but but we put an offer price on there, and we try to get them, and that does a pretty good job of getting people to respond. Sometimes they'll call in and they'll say, you guys are offering me too low on my property, and how can you do this and all this stuff. Or sometimes people will call in and say, thank you, I got your offer, I was thinking about selling, but the price is too low. And then we see if it's
You
something that we
negotiate.
can work on and negotiate a price. Sometimes they'll email, sometimes they'll text us, sometimes they'll even send us a letter back. So we get all kinds of responses, but that's the driver for the business: getting the mail out and dealing with the responses as they come in, whatever those responses are.
Thank you. The All right, so I forget the question I was about to ask you, but I wanted to make a comment. So one of the things that we got away from as a society is like making things a little bit easier for people. And one of the things that's really smart about your strategy is that contract that you put in there, because it crystallizes what's going on. It's like, look, I'm genuinely ready to make an offer on your property. You got like an actual contract in there, and it might not be the legit contract that goes to the title company or anything like that, but it brings so much clarity just to include that in your marketing. So that's a really smart thing, and I'm trying to like figure out a way that we can incorporate some of that into our marketing too. That's very
Yeah, I'll
smart.
tell you. I'll tell you, it's and sometimes we're off on our pricing because we're just looking at big sets of data, and we're getting these offer prices based off of averages for a certain area. So, say we're looking in New York at a particular county, we're looking at properties from 10 to 100 acres, and what's kind of the average price per acre that they've sold at retail, and then we sort of back out what percentage we need in order to make a deal worthwhile for us, and then we just do the math. It's like per acre, a certain price per acre we can pay, and then we just calculate that offer price. So it's like a mail merge thing. But sometimes, with land and within any real estate, really, it depends on the location, depends on a lot of factors about the property. Is it sloped? Is it swampland? Is it, in the FEMA flood zone? All these different factors come into play. So it's kind of those offer prices that we send out are based on averages, and then we get responses. Sometimes it's right on. Sometimes it needs to be adjusted. Maybe sometimes we're too high. Sometimes we're too low. But at least if we get a response and get some sort of line of communication going, and the seller is interested in selling, then there's a potential to work out a deal there. But the offer definitely gets people's attention, and you kind of weed out some of the people that that are just going to be wanting full retail value. That's the only way they want to sell. So those people
Yeah, and
generally won't
one
respond.
thing about marketing is it attracts, right? Everybody knows that marketing attracts, but something that we fail to remember is that it's to repel too. You just
Yeah,
mentioned that, like, yeah, it pushes away those people that want retail. We're not in here to do charity or nothing like that. We want to
right.
make money. We're running a business too, and our marketing will help filter out some of those people that are asking for prices that don't work within our business model.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Like you can't, some people send out what they call neutral letters, basically saying stuff like something along the lines of, "Hey, I want to buy your property. Are you interested in selling? Give me a call." That type of thing, like a real generic type message. They get a higher response rate, but there's a lot more weeding through the people that are, never going to be a deal for, at least for a real estate investor.
Absolutely. What is one lesson that land flipping has taught you and that you think everyone should learn at some point in their life?
Hmm, that's a good question. Well, it's really taught me that it's um, First of all, the one thing that we talked about is it kind of broke my broke my beliefs about it being a sort of a long-term game when it's not. There's many ways to do this business. So that's another thing it's taught me, that like, hey, the way I'm doing things may not, there's many ways to do it. There's people that invest in land and they do it a completely different way than I do it, and they're very successful at it. Some people buy, as they call it, desert squares, 5-acre parcels in the desert where they're paying $500 to $1,000 for them. And then they're selling them to people on terms, and they're basically a note holder. That's their whole business. I'm doing a completely different thing where I'm all doing, I'm not holding the financing on any of these deals. I'm just buying them and reselling them, kind of like you're flipping a house. But just that there's a lot of ways to do things and kind of be open to new strategies. And I guess that's the biggest thing that I've learned.
Got it. So like one of the things I like a lot is I like marketing, I like tech, I like tools. And one of these questions is, the question I have is, what underrated tool is indispensable for your job? So what's a tool that you're like, I absolutely need this for land flipping? If there's any tool I can't get rid of, it's this one. What tool is
Right.
that?
It's called MapRight. It's
Right.
it's an app where basically we can look up any sort of information about any property in the United States. It's all at our fingertips. So as I mentioned, we don't go out to any of these properties. We do send out a photographer during the process after we get something under contract. But MapRight is great because when a lead comes in, we look it up right away. We pull it up there. It's got numerous different satellite images, backgrounds that we can use. It's got overlays for contours on a property. It shows where the wetlands are, FEMA flood zone. It's just a wealth of information. And without it, it would be very tough. There are a couple competitor apps out there, but they're nowhere near as good as MapRight is, in my opinion.
Okay, so MapRight, you love some MapRight. You mentioned
Yeah,
that.
MapRight.
Some people are
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't know if it's this one, but that one is like, can you think of one tool? Some people can't. I appreciate your concise answer.
Yeah, definitely a good one. I'm a big fan.
Okay, next I want to go over to the personal questions. So these questions are more personal to you versus your business. The first question that I have, what's your biggest failure and what did you learn from that experience?
Biggest failure. Okay. And this is not related to like the land business or anything
It
like
could
that.
be. It's up to you.
Uh-huh.
However, whichever way you want to go.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just take, for instance, like related to the land business. I'll say, there are a couple deals that I bought that didn't go so well. Meaning, I didn't lose money on them. I still made money, but they were a hassle and they took a lot of time. One in particular, which I'll sort of highlight, is that I bought a property which was a landlocked property, meaning there's no legal access anywhere around the property. It didn't touch a public road. You didn't have a legal deeded easement to get to the property. And I bought it, and I knew it was landlocked, but I bought it because it was so cheap. It was 12 acres, and I think I paid $3,000 for it. I was like, oh, this is no problem. I'll be able to sell it for 15,000. Plus I thought it would, someone would be interested in it for a recreational property or something. But it just ended up being, I listed it. I got a ton of interest in it. A lot of people, were asking me about it. So it was a type of property. It took a long time to sell and I got tons and tons of inquiries, but none of them were very good. No one really understood the whole landlocked thing. And bottom line is I ended up making a little bit of money. I think I sold it for 6,000, something like that, 5 or 6,000. But it took me, 4 or 5 months. So in hindsight, it was just a hassle, I guess you could say. And it kind of taught me not to buy any more landlocked properties. So.
Yeah, I would learn that too. You know what? No, thank you. I'm good on that one.
Yeah.
So next question, if you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
Being a good dad. Yeah, I've got 3 kids, and I guess that's probably my most important job. And I know we get, being in business for ourselves and investors and everything, we get kind of sidetracked, I think, with our businesses, everything that's going on. But, we can never lose sight of our most important job, which is to be, a good family member, parent, whatever your situation is. And for me, it's being a good dad to my kids. So
Thanks. How old are your children?
Well, I guess they're not all children at this point, but they still are to me. One of them's 22, 20, and 12. All
Nice.
three girls. Yeah.
Nice. Next question. Tell us about three most influential people in your life and how they impacted you.
Yeah, I'd say it's all pretty much family members that have been very influential to me. My wife, very very influential to me. She's kept me on the right track for many years now, um, and then I've learned so much just from each one of my kids in a different way. So those are the most influential. I mean, those are the people I spend the most time with for sure. So
Thank you. The next question I have for you. What is the biggest challenge you are currently facing in your business?
yeah, the biggest challenge that I run into consistently with the land business is on the acquisition side. That as soon as we get these properties under contract, I'd love to be able to close on them right away.
Okay.
But we go through title and an escrow and or attorney, depending on what the state is, and uh, just to make sure that the title is good. So we run into a lot of situations where there are issues with the title, and obviously we can't close on those. And a lot of times it takes a while to get to the point to figure out that there is a problem with the title, and a lot of times those problems are not correctable. So that's the biggest frustration that I have. There's no real way around it. It's just kind of a numbers game. Just got to realize that some of the deals are not going to happen just because there's no clear title, for one reason or another. And it happens
Wow.
more in the land business because a lot of people inherit properties. They may have been in the family for a long time, and there's something back in the chain of title which causes a problem.
Yeah, and that makes sense. It might not be like actual practical use. Like today, we have more technology and we could do more stuff, but back then it's probably different. So that
That's right.
actually does make sense. Like, yeah, house, anybody can almost live in a house, but land,
Right.
like, what are you going to do with that land? Are you going to put something there? Just going to hold it? What are you going to do? So that does make sense.
Yeah, and with houses, a lot of times, when people buy them and when they transact, there's um, a lender involved, and they will really scrutinize any title issues and get them corrected along the way. Sometimes with land, it may get transferred to different people, the neighbors or whatever, and they'll do like a quick claim deed, or and no one's really
Oh,
investigated like the chain of title, and like, oh, there's a problem here, like so and so inherited it, but really, two other people inherited it as well, other
yeah,
relatives,
that
and
makes
then
sense.
and
It's like,
then they had
well,
five
what do we
kids,
do?
and
Yeah.
you might be trying to deal with 20 sellers, and it's just impossible to put something like that together.
Okay. Yeah, I see. Next question. These are meant to stomp you a little bit. First one, how can someone add immediate value to you or your business?
Well, I'm not really out looking for someone to do anything for me as far as add value or anything like that to what I'm doing. I'm always looking for people, I guess, that may be interested in partnering on deals, you know, um, funding deals, I guess you could say. So especially bigger ones, like if it's a larger property, I self fund most things myself, but sometimes we come up into some bigger properties, and it would be nice to have money partners to partner on some of those deals. But with land, that's one thing about it. Like, there's no real banks that will lend you money. It's not like there's hard money lenders out there,
Mhm.
but there are deal partners that are out there that will basically, put up the money for the deal, and then they will, you can do some sort of split on the profits. So those type of situations are there. So I'm always looking for, people that may be interested in something like that.
Okay, so
It'd
the
be a
next
win-win
question,
though.
the next question is like long-term value, but I can address both like here. So that question is a little bit selfish because I want to like, how can I add value to my guests? Right?
Mm,
Because I was teaching one time and I was like, teaching, the speaker was talking, he was like, Jerome, nobody ever asked me that question all this time I've been doing it. I was like, wow, people really don't. Typically, they don't ask us these questions when we're like doing this. So that's why I put that in there to see how
I
I
like
can
it.
add value to my guests as well as the audience, right? Because
Right.
somebody might be interested in something that you're doing. And it's like my guest before, he was like, just retweet my tweets on Twitter. And I was like, oh yeah, that's easy. That's a way that you can add value to people depending on where they are in business. So for you, there is this so like about investing through IRAs.
Right.
There is a company called Advana. You ever heard of them?
I think I've heard the name, but I don't know anything about them.
Okay, so those partners that you're looking for, this company, right? They've Advana, and any IRA company, but I'm familiar with Advana. They have a bi-weekly mastermind session where people come together every Friday and they say what they're looking for. I'm looking for deals. I'm looking for somebody that has deals. I'm looking for podcast guests. I'm looking for books, whatever it is, right? But it's Advana IRA, and it's a real estate centric, not real estate, but a lot of smart people invest in real estate. So it's a lot of real estate going down on that call. People are looking for deals. So I would say it would be a good idea. I'll send it to you by email too, to check out that call. Is a bi-weekly call every Friday. And
Wow,
people
that's
are just
awesome.
looking for deals. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure some people will partner up with you, see what you got going on, and just partner up on those deals. You self-fund a lot of them, but you can find a lot of partners by attending that Advana call and building some relationships there.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. That's
Yep.
great.
So,
See,
yep.
I appreciate it, Drew.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'll try to follow up via email too, but that's a really healthy call to go find like some funding partners and other just real estate partners. You might want to do something else, or you might want to be involved in something else and don't want to do it, or something like, you know what, I'll invest. So that's a really good place to go for that.
Yeah, very cool. I'll definitely check into that.
All right. So, do you read any books? I'm going to ask you this question about books.
Yeah, I mostly listen to them at this point.
Okay.
On
So,
Audible.
perfect. So, could you give us 3 books that you recommend and why you recommend those books?
Well, one of them that I've listened to lately, which I'm big into marketing as you are. I've got a marketing degree, but I didn't learn anything about marketing in
Yeah,
college.
like just like the
Learned everything
license,
at-
right? Like the real
Yeah.
estate license. You learn
Yeah, it's the same deal. It's crazy. It's amazing you can end up with a marketing degree from some of these places and you don't know anything about marketing. But
Yeah.
anyhow, that's a whole nother subject, right? But yeah, the latest one that I listened to that I really think is amazing is a book called $100 Million Offers. I don't know if
Oh
you've
yeah. Yep.
read or listened to that. but
Hormozy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's an amazing book. I really love, if you're kind of at the beginning stages of, thinking about being a real estate investor, Rich Dad Poor Dad is pretty much a constant, I guess you could say. And then, some of the classics I like too, like Think and Grow Rich and How to Win Friends and Influence People. Those are all really, really good ones as well. But
Do you have a favorite person that you like in regards to marketing?
well, I've been listening to a lot to Hormozy. I think
Hormozy?
he's, it kind of, I don't know, it just really resonates with me, kind of where
Okay.
I'm at, where I'd like to go. So that really resonates with me right now. So I said right
Okay,
now,
awesome.
but it changes. Things change.
Yeah, it changes. It does change. So I was on Hormozy, I think maybe a year ago.
Oh, were you?
You know,
Yeah.
it jumps around and you switch and
Yeah.
you switch. I do like his stuff though. I really like how smart he is. It's like, all right, I'm done with this. Now I'm gonna go buy businesses. And I can
Yeah.
kind of see how like you would be interested in that too. Like let's go hard, let's go bigger.
Yeah.
I can
Try to
kind
go
of see that
bigger.
about
Yeah.
you. Yeah, I can see that. So
Yep.
the next question, where can listeners find out more about you online?
At turningprofit.com. That's the kind of main hub for our podcast, and also where you'll be able to find the income reports that we do on a monthly basis, and also, other content. I'll be filming a lot of other content about land flipping and just kind of business, real estate business development in general. So anything that I can try to add value, I'll just try to turn on the camera and record it. So
Thank you for sharing that. I had a guest before, and her claim to fame was short sales, which you mentioned a little bit earlier. Her name was
Yep.
Dwan, and she was like, Jerome, the way I like to end my podcast is with one final closing word. And I was like, closing word? She was like, yeah, because sometimes people get long-winded. I was like, oh man. So I pose you the same thing, right? leave us with one closing word. You can pick one word, no explanation, no description, no reason why. Tell us what that word is.
Just one word.
Just one word.
Consistency.
Consistency. And now you can tell us why you picked that word.
Just because I'm a big fan, I think a lot of results in life come from consistency. And maybe a complementary word to that would be persistency. So, persistence. It's just a matter of, you get your system down, you just repeat it, and don't get sidetracked. And just, be really persistent about it, especially if you're in pursuit of some goals. You can't give up. See too many people give up before they really start seeing the results.
There's this quote that I like to use on my students. It's called, and it goes like this: imperfect consistency beats perfect inconsistency. And I have no idea who came up with that quote, but I like to use it because it's so true.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter how good it is if you're not consistent. Like, a person that's consistent will be the perfect every time because of the consistency. And what you just said, it is exactly that. Like, you have to be consistent. More than anything, people, Jerome, oh my God, you got all those pockets. None of them are perfect. Oh my God, you got all those posts. None is perfect, but I'm consistent.
That's right. Nobody's perfect. And how do you get better? Just by putting in the work, right?
Right. Be consistent. So I appreciate you hitting on that. And there is another question that I have. What is a question you wish I would have asked you, and how would you have answered?
Okay. So what's the most important thing? What's the most important thing to know as a real estate investor? So, and how I'd answer that is that, the most important thing about being a real estate investor is you got to pick a model, a proven model, and you just got to go all in and do it. And the more distracted you get, the worse it'll be. So if you could pick a model, whatever resonates best with you, whether it's land flipping, house flipping, commercial development, any of these type of things, there's plenty of different models and ways to make money in real estate investing. But the key is to picking one of them, going deep, really learning it, and then just doing it over and over and over again. And, eventually you can put a team in place which will help you with that consistency and repeating that over and over again. But you really, really need to laser focus on one model and just go for it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So I messed up again, right? We don't have to be perfect. So tell us again where we can find out more about you online.
Sure. Turningprofit.com. That's the central hub, and it'll link to YouTube and our social accounts as well. But that'll be a great start. And our podcast obviously is on, all the episodes are on there.
Pete, I appreciate you so much. Can you stick around for 3 minutes after the?
Yeah, of course, Jerome. Okay. Thanks a lot for having me on here.
Pete. All right.
Yep.